Hello and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to do more of a chatty sit-down video, which I don't really do a lot of on this channel, but let me know if it's something that you like and you're interested in and want to see more of from me. If you came here from my TikTok, you know that personal finance is a topic that I could yap about all day, every day. It is one of my personal passions and interests, and it is my goal to educate as many people as possible on the topic because I think it's so important and leads to so many open doors, especially for women to know about their finances. It leads to so much freedom and choice. So that is exactly what I'm going to be talking about on here. And it's not something that I've really talked much about on YouTube. So I'm excited to kind of blend the two spaces that I'm on online together. And because it's still 2026, it's early in the year. I know I'm a little late and behind on this, but I've just obviously had a couple of other videos planned in between. But I did want to just do a whole little 2026 finance video for you guys. I'm going to be talking about my money management system, my financial goals, and also some of the shopping rules that I set for myself this year. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, let's start with my money management system. I think this is so important for everyone to figure out for themselves. I think it's really important, especially at the start of the year, to sit down, review your finances, see where you're at, and take a very holistic approach. I like to review all of my different balances, all of my different bank statements, and also take a look at my savings for every single month, look at where some of my debt stands, etc. Like really just like to have the big picture. In terms of money management, I am someone who believes in budgeting. I don't think that you have to have a super strict or very detailed budget, but I do think that knowing one, how much you're making every single month, and then two, how much you're spending every single month at the bare minimum is something that everybody should know. And I think it's also super helpful to review this on a quarterly basis at the very minimum. I have a budgeting template that I've been using for the last 4 years or so, and I love it. Has taken me a few years to truly refine it and have it include all of the things that I personally find useful to track and in a way that makes the most sense to me. But there are so many budgeting templates online. You could even do this by hand if you really wanted to. There are just truly a million different ways that you can go about this. If you're interested in the tracker that I'm using, you can get it by becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter. All the links will be down below for you. Essentially, in this template, you get one yearly overview where you can just quickly look at a glance at how much you've made, how much you've saved, how much you've spent, and then it also breaks down by category and by month, which I think is super helpful to just have on there in case I need to go, especially when I'm going back and looking at past years. But then when it comes to the actual budgeting, I like to do it on a monthly basis rather than paycheck by paycheck because my bills all come in on a monthly basis. My rent is paid on a monthly basis. I do my savings on a monthly basis. I think that it's just easier to track it this way, and it kind of gives me more of a big picture versus every 2 weeks having to do this. So in this template, I can put in my fixed expenses, which include things like my rent, my utilities, Wi-Fi. It also includes any subscriptions that I have and that I know I'm going to be paying for every single month. I then track my variable expenses, which are things like my groceries, my dining out, any shopping that I'm doing, travel, home purchases, personal care items, etc. These categories are things that you can really decide on for yourself and what makes most sense for you. I also have a section for tracking my savings, and this also includes my investments outside of my 401k and HSA, which are through my employer. So I put any extra expenses in there because I'm only tracking my post-tax money in this. And finally, there is a section for debt where I track my student loans, which they're not a super high priority for me in terms of trying to pay them off right now because they are very low interest rates. I do want to pay these off before I'm 30. That is my long-term vision, but I've been able to refinance the interest rates and get them down to below 5% across all of my loans. So again, I'm just not in a super major rush to pay these off. I'm just really paying the minimums right now and focusing on my savings and investments instead. So that is my budgeting template. Now let's move on to my bank accounts. This is actually a system that I am changing up a little bit this year, but that I'm super excited about. First is I have a SoFi high yield savings account, and I'm actually using it as my checking account this year. And I got this idea from my friend on TikTok, Mackenzie, who I will make sure to link her down below because she's incredible. She is so smart, and I think everyone should follow her, especially if you're interested in personal finance. Essentially, I'm going to be keeping 1 month's worth of expenses in this high yield savings account, and that allows my money to grow a little bit more than it would be just sitting in a regular checking account. And it's great because with SoFi, there are no minimums to how much you have to keep in here. You can move money as often as you need. It's really easy and simple to be able to pay off any bills that I have every single month through this. And again, it's just going to earn a little bit more interest. And Mackenzie has a whole video explaining this, so I'm also going to link that down below so you can check it out specifically. But it was great, and she convinced me to do this. I do also have a checking account with Capital One, and this checking account I use specifically for my fun money. So I only have $100 from each of my paychecks deposited into it. I get paid twice a month, which means that that's $200 a month that goes in there. And fun money means anything, whether it's dining out, going out with friends, any like concerts or experiences like classes that I want to take, whatever it is, or just general shopping is going to come from this fun money account. And this is a bit of a new system that I'm trying out this year because I do want to give myself more of like an allowance with my money, because I've found that what I've done in the past when I had a separate checking account that had all of my money in it, including, the money that I'm using to pay my bills or whatever it is, when I saw it sitting in there, I knew that I had the money available to buy something, and I wasn't very thoughtful because I was like, oh yes, I can technically afford this, and I would just buy whatever it was on impulse rather than thinking through the purchase and if it was something that I actually did really need or want. This way I have a little bit of an allowance. There's a little bit more of a barrier to how much I'm actually allowed to spend, and I can use this money guilt-free. I can use it however I want. We're gonna see how it works for the first couple of months, and if I feel like it's a little too restrictive, I can always increase the amount that goes in there. I can play around with it and see what works best, but I am excited. I think that this is going to help a ton. And then finally, I do have a bunch of high yield savings accounts with Capital One, and these are the ones that I use for my actual savings, and this is where I do my sinking funds, which I think everyone should have or consider because it's so helpful when it comes to short-term and long-term financial planning. Sinking funds are essentially buckets of money that you designate for different savings goals that specifically you might have coming up throughout the year. For example, if you have a dog and you know that you have to take them to the vet every 6 months or every year or whatever it is, and there's a bill for that, or pet insurance that you're paying monthly, you can start saving money into that bucket. Or if you're trying to save up to buy a home, you might have a sinking fund for that. And that way you can just see and visualize all of your different goals and see the progress that you're making on each of them rather than having them in one lump sum savings account. So these are the different buckets of savings accounts that I have. First is my emergency fund. This currently is only sitting at about 1 month's worth of expenses. We'll get back into that later, but I do want to build that up a little bit more. The next one is for travel, which I do quite a bit of, so I do try to build this up throughout the year. I also have a car sinking fund. I don't currently have a car, but I am going to have to get one in the near future, so it's something that I'm starting to save up for now. I also have a gift sinking fund, which is great to pull from for any birthdays. During the holidays when I'm shopping for friends and family, having that in there is always nice and makes things less stressful throughout the year. I have a fun fund, which is separate from the fun money that I'm allowed to spend from my checking account every single month. This is specifically for some of those bigger purchases that I want to make. I know this year I'm probably going to have to buy a new laptop because this one I've had for 6 years now, and it is starting to get on its, last few legs there. So I'm probably gonna have to replace it. I want to get another tattoo at some point this year, so that's where I save for some of those larger purchases. And then the last sinking fund that I have is a dog fund, because I do also want to buy a dog at some point, but I want to make sure that I just feel like I'm in a good spot with that, because again, like I mentioned before, you have to buy pet insurance, there are vet bills that come with it, food, treats, etc. The third part of my money management system that I want to talk about are my credit cards. I have quite a few credit cards, 5 or 6 of them now, that I've opened at various points throughout my life and that have made sense at different points in my life. I could do a whole breakdown on credit cards, but I have narrowed it down to just 3 that I'm going to be using in 2026. The first one is my Built credit card. You may have heard of this before, but it essentially allows you to pay your rent with a credit card and you earn points on that rent. One thing to note is that in order for your rent to count as those points, you have to make 5 other qualifying purchases with that card every single month. So I just put all of my subscriptions on it so that I don't have to think about making those 5 purchases. It just basically happens automatically with my other expenses. They are also changing this card a little bit this year. I actually think that by the time that you're watching this video, we will see what the new card system will look like. Hi, editing Jess here. They have released the new benefits and features of the 3 different tiers of Built 2.0 cards, and unfortunately I don't think I like any of them enough to keep this card, so I'm probably going to transition into the Wells Fargo autograph card instead of getting a new Built card, or just canceling my account entirely. So I will not be using this card in 2026, unfortunately. I also have a Capital One Saver One credit card, and this card gets me 3% cash back on all dining and grocery purchases. So that's exactly what I'm going to be using this card for, because why not get the 3%? That's a pretty substantial number that adds up over time. And it's 4 purchases that I'm already going to have to be making. I do also get, I think, 8% cash back on any like entertainment purchases, if it's like a concert or some kind of game that you're going to watch. And I do love a concert experience. So if I do have any of those purchases that come up this year, those are also going to go on there. And then the final card is my United Explorer card. This is my travel credit card of choice. Like I mentioned, do travel quite a bit, and I am a United loyalist. I do frequently fly with them, so this card made the most sense at the time for me. And obviously I'm going to put any travel expenses on this card so I can start to earn some more points. I've already saved a lot of money on flights because of the points that I've accumulated with this card, so I think it's super, super worth looking into. And then essentially any other purchases that I make are going to go on this card. And that is it for my money management system. I feel like that was a lot and I've been talking forever, but I also feel like I ran through that pretty quickly. Of course, feel free to ask any questions that you might have in the comments, but this is what's going to work best for me this year. Now let's talk about some of my financial goals for the year. I honestly have a lot of personal goals that are going to require quite a bit of money, which means that I have to save quite a bit of money this year. I mentioned earlier that my emergency fund only has about 1 month's worth of expenses in there right now. It did have around 2 months previously, but I did have to use some of that emergency fund at the end of last year. So I'm currently working on rebuilding that slowly, and I would like to get it up to 4 months worth of expenses. So that is going to be quite a bit of money that I'm going to have to save, and it is a pretty high priority for me. My eventual goal would be to get it at 6 months worth of expenses, but in the short term, I'm just looking at 4 months for this year. My second goal is kind of automatically already done for me because I set this up with my healthcare elections for this year, but that is to max out my HSA. This is the first year that I have to pay for my own healthcare. I just turned 26 in November, so I did have to get off of my parents' insurance and get my own. I chose the high deductible plan because I'm not someone who goes to the doctor very often, so it just made the most sense to me. And this plan allows me to have access to an HSA, which is a triple tax advantaged account, and it just makes a lot of sense to invest in, especially while you're young and relatively healthy. But of course, everyone has different needs and priorities, so take that with a grain of salt. My third goal is also to increase my Roth IRA contributions. I do increase my 401k contributions just automatically through my employer by 1% every single year. And this year I do want to increase how much I'm putting into my Roth IRA. I would like to max it out, but I don't think that's going to happen this year because of all of my other expenses and things that I have to pay and save for. I also am starting yoga teacher training at the end of this month, which was another expense that I am incurring over the next couple of months. So that is pretty expensive, but I'm hoping will pay off in the long run when I can, teach yoga on the side and be able to earn a little bit of income from that. So I am excited to be able to do that, but it is another expense that I have to add to my budget this year. I do have a couple of other goals, which again, I want to keep private and not talk about too much because I don't want to jinx it, and I'll share as soon as there is something to share, but that is the bulk of the important goals that I have right now. And finally, I thought that it would be fun to just talk about some of the shopping rules that I have for myself this year. I am someone who has been working on my impulse spending habits for the last 2 or 3 years now. I no longer shop on Amazon. I am just much more thoughtful in general with my purchases, especially when it comes to things like clothing. I pay attention to the quality versus just trying to have a good deal. I don't spend on a ton of trinkets anymore. I definitely focus my spending on experiences and time with friends or travel. So I have made a lot of progress, but there's always more work that can be done. So these are some of the shopping rules that I have for myself this year. The first one being that $200 a month for fun money rule that I talked about earlier. Number 2 is that I'm trying to only buy 12 new pieces of clothing this year. So we'll see how I do on that. I realized that what I tend to do a lot, even though I don't really need more clothing, but whenever I do want to buy something, it's usually I end up doing it in bulk and I buy multiple things at once versus just one piece that I really do need and that I've been thoughtful about. The third rule is that I have to wait 72 hours before I make any purchase, and this just goes back to that impulse spending. I'm pretty good at this now, but every now and then I do want to make an impulse purchase. So to avoid that and fix that problem before it happens, I'm following this rule because then that means that I have to think about it and think if I really do need whatever the item is. And oftentimes I don't. The fourth rule is that I'm going to be trying to buy thrifted or secondhand first whenever I can. Of course, this goes for things like clothing, but it's also things like home decor, furniture, and just a lot of other things that like miscellaneous items that come up. There are so many ways to buy secondhand, whether it is through a thrift shop, antique store, or through Facebook Marketplace, Depop, The RealReal. Like there are so many ways to buy secondhand, and oftentimes the quality is a lot better than things that you can find in stores today. So it's usually better for my wallet, but also just better in the long term for me. And my fifth and final rule is no dining out or getting coffee out unless I'm doing it with friends or if I'm going to the coffee shop specifically to work. I got a Breville espresso machine last year and I love it. It's definitely helped me with my coffee buying in general, but I definitely still find myself making excuses to go get a coffee. I'll have my first coffee in the morning at home, and then midday I'll go and buy myself a coffee, or if I'm at the office, I'll go and get myself a coffee. And I'm trying to stop that. I do like going to a coffee shop every now and then for the ambiance and getting work done, whether it's writing my next newsletter or editing a video or working on my novel, but I can't just be going to a coffee shop to get a coffee and that's it. I only want to do it if I'm doing it again with friends, or if I'm gonna sit there for 2+ hours and get work done, because that way it feels a little bit more like a treat. And there you have it. That is the end of this little 2026 finance video. I don't think I've ever talked this long on camera, so I hope that this wasn't too jumbled and actually makes sense when I go back to edit this and watch it. But again, let me know if this is the type of content that you want to see more of, or if you prefer the vlogs, and I will see you guys in my next video. But thanks so much for sticking to the end. I love you. Bye.